So I want to start by just telling you a little bit about some of the experiences that have led to my understanding of why we need to be focused on inspiring children to read when it's not required, or to read for fun. When I was in high school, I was in 10th grade, I was in a regular English class. And in this regular English class, what we did is we read short stories and took spelling tests. And that was it. That was like mostly what we did. And I remember after an entire semester of 10th grade English, the only thing I had learned was that my teacher thought OJ was innocent. And I remember thinking to myself, I feel like there should be more to 10th grade. Like, I didn't have another point of reference, but I just felt like there should be more. And after like a semester of boredom, I went to my counselor and I said, listen, can you put me in any other type of class? I really don't care what it is, I just can't, I'm too bored in this class. And she switched me into a advanced 10th grade English class. And I remember the first day walking into this class, you know, a new semester, I looked around and the first question that popped into my head was, where did all these white people come from? Because in my school, it was almost all black and Latino, but in this advanced class, all of a sudden there were like white kids sprinkled everywhere, right? And so I was like, what is that about? And then, as I sat down, the teacher walked around and she put these little pamphlets, or these little packets on our desk, and the packets were full of lists and lists and lists of books. And she said, this semester, you're going to be reading 2 novels. And I remember thinking like, wait a minute, when you say 2 novels, you mean like the whole thing? Because in regular English, we were just doing short stories and taking spelling tests. And she wasn't finished. She's like, and you're going to be writing 2 book reports. So I'm just like, wait, 2 novels and 2 book reports. And the whole time this was happening, I was looking around in my classroom, I was looking at the teacher, and I was like, why is there such a drastic difference in reading expectations between this regular 10th grade English class and this advanced English class? Doesn't all my friends back in regular English need to be reading novels? At least one novel, right? Writing book reports? And there was really no answer. And I was like, well, why is there such a difference in terms of the racial makeup of these classes? What is that about? What that experience taught me was that I needed to be in control of my learning. And that I couldn't depend on a teacher, on a school, on a classroom, right? To determine or to ensure that I was going to learn whatever it was that I need to learn. There are a lot of students whose reading interest, whose desire to read is based on a teacher they have, or an experience they have, or a teacher they don't have, or an experience they haven't had. And what I want to posit to you guys is that if we're going to really close the reading achievement gap, we're going to have to create the type of reading experiences that allow children's desire to read not to be dependent on a particular teacher, on a particular classroom, or a particular school. Now, in 10th grade, I had an interesting experience in addition to this horrible English teacher. I had 2 students walk up to me, independent of each other, and tell me something. There was a girl named Leah Watson who walked up to me and she said, Alvin, I think you're really smart. I think you should take AP English with Miss McKinney. And then another girl, Sherelle Williams, just came up to me out of the blue and said, Alvin, I think you're really smart. I think you should take AP US History with Miss Green. And I remember thinking to myself, why are these girls walking up to me telling me to take classes? What is this about? Right? Unsolicited. And I remember thinking to myself, because I was in pre-AP, but I wasn't in any advanced classes. I didn't know anybody in advanced classes. Everybody from my neighborhood, they were in regular classes. because that's where we were put. And so I remember thinking to myself, maybe they see something in me that I don't see in myself, right? And so I decided to listen to these girls, and they were like a grade ahead of me. So they were like in 11th grade, and I was in 10th grade. I decided to take this AP English class and this AP U.S. History class, and not just because they were fine. That had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. So they weren't even in the classes. They were a grade ahead, so that didn't have anything to do with it. But once I got into these classes, I kept thinking about all those students that were in the regular classes that I used to be in. What was happening to them? And so during my junior year, I decided to do a science fair project where I surveyed over 200 of my classmates to find out what their reading habits were. Because I had started to really develop an interest in reading, and I wanted to know what other students were doing. And what I discovered was that most of my peers did not read at all if it wasn't required. That's what, and at that time, there wasn't even social media. They weren't even reading on Facebook. It was just, they didn't read if it wasn't required. And I remember saying to myself, well, I need to do something about this. This is not okay. And so I ended up creating a reading incentive program. I called it It Takes Two because you would have to write 2 paragraphs. One paragraph about summarizing the book, and then another paragraph about why you thought other students in the school should read it, and because I like that Bill Withers song, or I did in high school. And then I went and wrote a grant and convinced the Barnes and Nobles in Little Rock to give me a $810 grant to implement it at my high school. Now, the whole time I'm trying to get everybody else in my school to read and design programs, I took an ACT during my junior year and scored a 16 in reading, which in Arkansas, if you score below an 18, I think it's below a 19, you actually have to take remedial classes when you go to college. So while I'm excited and telling everybody you should be reading, I wasn't even able myself to do well enough on these tests to not have to be in remedial when I went to college. And so I remember walking up to my English teacher, and I remember, telling her, Miss McKinnon, I can't get into anybody's college with this score. And she turned around and was rummaging. She was one of those teachers behind her desk with crazy, but she had books everywhere and all kind of random stuff. And she reached down and she eventually came out with this book, right? And she handed it to me. And I remember looking at this book, and I said to her, "The Hobbit? What's a Hobbit?" This is what I said to my English teacher, because that's the kind of student I was. And she said to me, "Alvin, just read the book." And so I went off for our, I think it was spring break, and I came back, and I was like, "Miss McKinnon, what happens to the ring?" I need you to tell me what happened to the ring. And she said, "Well, you have to read all the books." I'm like, "What other books?" She's like, "The Lord of the Rings books." I was like, "I don't know anything about that." And I started reading the first book, and then I think the movie came out. What I want you all to know is this. One, messengers really do matter. It was not a counselor, it was not a teacher who convinced me that I should read when it wasn't required. Because in that regular class, we were kind of just chilling. It was 2 of my peers that convinced me that I should take these advanced classes. And so when you think about how do you inspire the students that you care so much about to read when it's not required, you need to accept the reality that you may not even be the messenger that student needs. Are you creating opportunities in your libraries, in your schools, for some of their peers to interact in meaningful and substantive ways? Are you creating opportunities for people outside of your school right, to come in and be a part of those reading experiences. Now, I didn't start off as a reader, right? My mom, I mean, she did everything she could, to ensure that I had the skills, the reading skills. But unfortunately, some of her strategies, although they may have helped me read a little bit, they didn't necessarily inspire me to read for fun. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and she would make me come in from playing to do reading lessons, right? Which, for me, I was just like, you know what, this reading thing is not okay. But this is what I want you all to know. Right now, more than 85% of black male fourth graders are not proficient in reading today. This is not last year, right, or a few years ago. Like right now, nearly 9 out of 10 black male fourth graders, and this is according to the U.S. Department of Ed, one of their longitudinal studies. Now, a lot of people talk about this as like, this is the problem. Look at this. This is the problem. And what I want to suggest today is that this is actually not the problem itself, but rather it is a symptom of other kind of underlying problems. One of those is that a lot of young black boys and other boys of color lack relevant male reading models. During the years when boys are learning to read, some of them do not even encounter a black male reading or encouraging them to read, right? Less than 2% of teachers in the United States today are black males. And that's K to 12. When you look at the first few years when boys are learning to read, right, there are almost no black male teachers. Right? Also, a lot of boys are raised by single mothers. A lot of black boys are raised by single mothers. And so we have a situation where they're not encountering relevant male reading models at home or at school. And then, black children are disproportionately more likely to live in low-income communities that are book deserts, where high-quality books are just difficult to find, whether that's a bookstore or whether that's libraries or even in their homes. Now, when there are books that are present, when there are books, too often the books that have black characters deal with slavery, civil rights, their biographies, or the books are about how the character is different. I love my beautiful black hair. I love my beautiful brown skin. All of these books are important. They are all important. But they shouldn't be the only kinds of books that kids have access to. Now, when I was at ALA this year, I had a booth for Barbershop Books. And I asked nearly every single librarian that came to the Barbershop Books booth, and I would say it was definitely well over 100. It might have even been a few hundred. But I asked them one question. Can you name for me one book that is laugh out loud funny and has a black protagonist? Can you name me one book that is laugh out loud funny and that has a black protagonist? Hundreds of librarians, and I wasn't able to get an answer. I see a hand over by Permabound. Last night I got an answer. But when I was at ALA, I was not able to get an answer. And this is not an indictment of the librarians, many of whom have been working in library services longer than I've been alive, some of them. But to me, what this reveals is that there's a misalignment. And when I say misalignment, what I mean is that the mission of libraries, of schools, right, as it relates to reading, is to inspire children to become lifelong readers, right? But the mission of the people where they're getting the books from is to publish books that they can sell. So libraries and schools only to some extent have access to books that were created because they would sell, not necessarily because they were going to inspire reluctant readers to want to read for fun. And that doesn't mean that that those things are mutually exclusive. That's not what I'm saying. I think that you can definitely publish books and there are tons and tons of books that have been published by publishers that inspire children to read. But what I'm saying is this. If you ask most librarians, what are the types of books that make boys excited about reading, that make them want to read for fun? What's one of the things that they would say? Humor, right? Boys love joke books. They love gross books. They love silly books. They know that. Librarians know this. Yet, when it comes to the types of books that they give to boys of color or that they buy when they ask for diverse titles, they often fall into the exact same formula. And a lot of that has to do with the imperatives that publishers have. They have to sell books. And so they've sold certain types of books before, and so they generally publish more of those same kinds of books. What I want to encourage librarians to do today is to not just look at the obstacles to finding the books that are so desperately needed to inspire young black boys and all children to become lifelong readers and to choose to read for fun. I want to encourage you not just to look at the obstacles, but to also look at the opportunities, right? I spoke to a librarian this weekend who's in Atlanta. And he told me that at his school library, he doesn't have a single self-published title. Now, I totally understand the obstacles that exist for librarians and library systems to find high-quality books that exist outside of the channels that they currently use. But if our communities are getting more diverse and the progress within the institutions, the publishing institutions, are slow, librarians, because of your imperative, your mission, right, I think that we have to begin looking for opportunities to connect the children that we care so much about to titles and reading experiences that are going to really create transformation for them. Now, Barbershop Books won this Innovations in Reading Prize. And, there are lots of organizations that focus on access, right? Lots of them. But what I would argue is different about the work that we're doing is that we're really focused on identity. And that's central to everything that we do. We want, at the end of the day, for little black boys and other boys of color to say 3 words. I'm a reader. That's it. I believe that if we can create the experiences that inspire our children to say those 3 words, right, they will read for fun. Because guess what? When you identify as a reader, what does a reader do? They read, right? The problem is that when children come into schools and their early experiences with reading is someone administering assessment to tell them all the letters they don't know, all the letter sounds they don't know, all the words they don't know, it doesn't really inspire or cultivate their reading identity. And, in this age of standardized testing and data-driven instruction, conversations about identity are hard. And the reason why I would argue that it's so hard is because it requires us to step outside our comfort zone and to step outside what we may already know. If a teacher says to you, I'm trying to move a student, or a principal says, we want to move this student from this reading level to this reading level, most teachers say, okay, well, let's find out what skills he needs to learn. These are the skills that you need at this particular reading level, right? That's kind of what's happening. But if you ask teachers, ask librarians, or I would like to know how to help this student identify as a reader. Well, how do you do that? Like literally, how do you do that? If someone was to ask you right now, hey, I have this room full of black kids, that I'm going to bring to your library.
how can you help them identify as readers? How would that change the type of experiences? Would you invite different kinds of people to come in and do read-alouds? Would you choose different kinds of books? The questions that we're asking are so important. For those of you who didn't have an opportunity to attend one of my breakout sessions, I want to just quickly tell you about, kind of Barbershop Books and what we're doing. We create these child-friendly reading spaces. We ship them to barbershops across the country. We use this curated list of books that are pretty much books that were taken from recommendations that boys gave to us. We use some very simple criteria, in terms of selecting barbershops to participate. Do they have 40 boys a month? Do they have the space for the bookshelf in their shops? And are the barbershops owners and or managers interested in having the program? Here's a little bit about the impact that we've seen thus far. We asked some barbers at one of our early literacy workshops, how often do you see boys reading in your barbershop? And what we found is that 27% said never, 73% said rarely, and 8 months later, when we asked them the exact same question, 27% said daily. They see boys reading daily. 64% said they see boys reading almost every day, and 9% said a few times a week. They literally went from seeing no reading happening in their barbershop among boys to seeing boys reading almost every day. There's so much to cover. This is what I want you guys to remember. Skills are important and they're necessary. But if we're going to actually close the reading achievement gap, we have to do something different. We have to think differently and we have to ask different questions. And you all, in many ways, are the gatekeepers for your schools and to the transformative reading experiences that many of your students so desperately, desperately need. I want to just encourage and hopefully inspire you to go back to your schools and to think about and look for the opportunities that exist. Thank you all so much.